Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Alice and the Creative Mornings for inviting me here today to share with you a little bit my thoughts about art and how art is the voice of the artist for peace and justice. Also to speak a little bit about SOS Art. It's a non-profit organization I founded 21 years ago, and you just heard a little bit its mission. Actually, listening and reading the manifesto of Creative Mornings, I really felt probably I may be superfluous here today, because exactly you're going to see that my talk, addresses all of these points that Jeremy, mentioned a little earlier. You may ask, why is critical, the theme critical, related to what I'm going to say? When we think of critical, we think of having noticed something that we would like different, that really we're not very much in favor, and as such that really we make a critique, but if we stop there, it may be a negative critique. So frequently we need to take it one step further and go, if we critique it, offer the alternative, what really could be the alternative to change it, to improve it. And being critical actually is probably the first and primary role of an artist. Because an artist, using their art, to express themselves, if they see something that is really not good, it is their responsibility, or they don't agree with it, their responsibility to be critical of it. But the artist, as I will illustrate a little later, being creative, have the major quality of being able, using their imagination, their skills, and so on, to offer an alternative, to create in their mind something different, and therefore to add to the reality that is and create a new reality. So in this way, critical is really an important quality of an artist, and it's a responsibility, not only a quality, but in addition, that an artist can, through their art, add to it by offering an alternative. So, I think that's how it's going. Yeah, okay. So my presentation today is going to be first about art as the voice of the artist, reflecting the artist's life and life in general. And you want to see, why all of these are important, but how it reflects in a critical yet constructive way what is going on, and how we would like it to be different, but not stopping there, limiting ourselves to there. How can you really offer an alternative and contribute to social justice and a better world? The second part, after I give this introduction, I will speak a little bit about myself and my art. I will show a few images of what I've done and how I really could fit in what I already addressed earlier. And finally, I will speak a little bit about SOS Art. What is its mission? What are its activities? What have we achieved so far through SOS Art in fitting this particular theme and in fitting the mission of Creative Mornings, because it's exactly our mission. So I will go first with an introduction. Let me see how I work with this one here. I don't know. Is it working as a pointer? Okay, it doesn't matter. So I will go with the introduction, then what is art and why it is important. We need to define art really to be able to go further. And I will make a distinction between art for art's sake and art for the artist's sake, because after all, art being the expression of the artist should be for the sake of the artist. And then art for life's sake, extrapolate from the artist to life in general, and art as a means to community engagement. And then I will go with a conclusion. First of all, when we think of art, frequently we think, at least in our consumer society, we think of a beautiful object, an object that you like, that is aesthetic, that is pleasing, and that in many cases we would like to live with. and some people would like even to invest in it, buy it, get it. And there's nothing wrong in this function of the art. This function is really beautiful because art, therefore, will add beauty to the world. And by adding beauty to the world, will create an atmosphere around it for those who see it and experience it. But art should not be limited to that function. And frequently, in a consumer society, sadly enough, it is limited to that function. Art, in addition, reflecting the artist, should really be an expression. The voice of the artist should be used by the artist as the expression for the artist, a communication tool for the artist, saying, the artist communicating with themselves, saying what really they don't like and what they like, and therefore reflecting their values, beliefs, what's important to them, and pointing to what needs changed and offering an alternative. And here I really would like to quote Ernest Fischer, who is an Austrian writer, who in the 1959 published a fantastic book called Necessity of Art. And Fischer says, art is necessary in order that man be able to recognize and change the world. But then he adds, he said, in a decaying society, art, and I will, undermark, if it is truthful, must also reflect decay. And this is where critical, the theme of critical comes. If really you are truthful to yourself, you cannot ignore the decay, you cannot ignore what's really going wrong, and you need to reflect it. But not only that, art must show the world as changeable and help create it. And this is the second aspect, that you criticize and then you take it one step further, really to improve on it. So, therefore we speak about art, what is art and why art has these important roles in the artist. First of all, I would like to say that, every art for me at least, and I know for everyone who practices art, has a transcendental quality, a spiritual quality. It's really the moment where you communicate with the spirit above the material. And it's really finally part of what it means to be human. And, as Jeremy read the mission, this is really a quality that is part of every individual. That really every individual, being a human, will is creative and use this possibility to transcend the material and become spiritual. So, it is a creative process where the artist, using imagination and skills, bring to life something new and beautiful, which is fantastic, but where the artist expresses important ideas and feeling. In this doing, the artists using their creative potential becomes creators. Why? Because they are really going to use whatever is inside them to add something different to this world. And if you believe, or whatever, it doesn't have to be any religious value, but if we believe that we're here for a purpose, if we've been created in a certain way, whatever you believe in, it could be any force that you believe in, if that's really true, therefore, we are creators, we have a godly quality, and as such, we become co-creator in this world. We become really individuals whose responsibility is to add to the creation. It's not really we're going just through it and doing nothing. If we have the potential, and we do, whatever it is, and we'll address who is an artist and what is art, so we become co-creator in this world. Of course, you add to the world beauty, but also we better it, and we want to make by our work, the world a better, equal, and just place, and it becomes our responsibility. And when I say the responsibility of the artist, I will extrapolate this to later. It will become the responsibility of every individual, because every one of us is an artist in their own way, and we'll address that. So the other really very important aspect of art, and that really makes makes the voice of the artist so important, is that art is an integrative activity, which really involves the entire person. Many of you who are artists would realize that when you create a piece of art, you're not just copying something, you're putting yourself, you're getting in touch within yourself, interior, with your thinking, feeling, experiences, intuition, values. You put all of this together and if you're truthful to yourself, and I will address that, to really create a piece of art. And as such, it becomes a very integrative activity that reflects the artist. And so the creative piece would reflect the artist, reflect the feelings of the artist, the emotion, the experience, but also the values of the artist, the beliefs of the artist. And if it does that, therefore, it will take it one step further to better this world. So a truthful artist, and when we say truthful, is we're saying of an artist who is really, whenever they create, are in touch with themselves, are doing from their heart, and not really copying something or doing a piece of art for commercial purposes. Someone who is really there, wanting to create something which represents who they are. A truthful artist, therefore, cannot ignore their reality and silence their experiences, their thoughts and feelings. Their art becomes their voice to reflect, express, and communicates their beliefs and their values. So, you know, what I'm saying, you know, if you look at the activity, the creative activity of art, it really demands that the artist, or it requires that the artist be in touch with themselves. And if they are with themselves, they cannot ignore their reality and the reality that they live and that surrounds them. Therefore, they need to be critical, and therefore they need to propose something different and be co-creators. When you create, you focus on yourself, and many of you would say that these are moments where you forget who you are. You forget the world around you. You forget the time. You're so much immersed in what you're doing that really you're connected with the spiritual. And you're above the material. And as a result, you transcend the moment, the immediate moment, the conventional wisdom, and you connect with a spiritual receptive state. And this state is called flow, F-L-O-W. And it has been documented medically, and we're going to address this later, that really is a state that an artist who creates go through, and that this moment changes the artist, changes the brain of the artist, and therefore contribute to something entirely new in the artist. And the imagination, you know, if you use your imagination, it allows you to transcend the literal reality, to go above what you're living, and at that time, to be able to offer an alternative, to be able to create something different, something new that will be, you know, whatever is your topic, could be for adding beauty and betterment to this world. And art, and if we go what Herbert Marcuse, the German philosopher, said, art allows the artist this imaginative space for freedom, because you know you're free of everything around you when you create, to regenerate the lost, the hidden, the creative, the spiritual, and intuitive capacities of human life. And that's really the strength of art. So the artist, therefore, you know, brings to life a new form, original to the artist, and reflective of the artist's self, thinking, imagination, and inner self. Artists not only transmits what they think in a critical way, but also offers an alternative, creates a new, sorry, what did I do here? I don't know. They create a new imaginary possible world. Therefore, the artist does not conform to reality, but as a co-creator, again, as Herbert Marcuse said, break the monopoly of established reality, define what is real, and create a new reality. So the artist is not only satisfied with what's going on, it's not only criticizing what's going on, but now is going to create a new reality and offer a new reality and change the equation. And that's really the strength of the artist as a co-creator in this world. So we spoke of art, you know, and we said that really all of this comes from the artist, but, you know, I think we are engineered in a certain way that there are certain activities that we do that affects us as well and change us, and art is one of them. The process of art making creates a meditative space, a place where the spiritual life and the creative life converge, and where one is held in the present moment. I already mentioned flow. I'm going to go here a little bit more in details about it. It is a state of effortless attention, where a person doesn't really need to make an effort. You're completely involved in what you're doing. And probably many of you, when you start doing art, you realize that you start at 8 in the morning, and it's already 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you haven't realized it. Time goes by, you're happy about it. There's a very good sense of happiness within you, and you create, and then you focus on it. It's a mental state of being completely present and fully immersed in a task. It's a state of altered awareness where sense of time changes. You forget time going back. The creator becomes lost and absorbed, yet fully present to what they are doing. Outside distractions recede from consciousness. You really ignore whatever is happening. You're focusing on your task. And your mind is fully open, attuned to your creation. And very little self-awareness or critical self-judgment. When you create art, you don't really become judging yourself or taking your mind to say, well, I've done this right or done right. You try, you create, you explore this. And this will really add to your creation. And, you experience intrinsic joy. I don't know, I know, for instance, when I do my art, I will go for hours and hours and I'll be very happy. These were the moments probably where I experienced the most happiness doing it, creating it. And I will tell you, for instance, I will do something, I will be so happy, and I will go to bed, and in the middle of the night, I will wake up, I say, wow, I'll go and look at the piece that I've done, because I was so happy of what I've done, to look at it. And I am not the only one, many artists tell you about the same thing, about, what is. And what's very important is this mental state of flow differs markedly from the mental state involved in solving problems on an IQ test or in doing an instructed task. So it's not really, hey, I need to use my brain to judge and analyze something or solve a problem. You are here to create and to add. Okay, that's an experience that a person does, an artist does. But what's really interesting is that this experience is correlated with medicine, is correlated with biological changes in the individual. And there are documented brain changes while in flow. And how were these proven? Experiments were done using functional MRI, where, artists in their moments of creation, were under an MRI machine, and, a certain material was injected in them, and the material reflected, parts of the brain which were active. And you could really test this with MRI, because you would see these parts of the brain kind of like light up. And, the experiments were done using functional MRI on artists, in particular on musicians who are improvising music. And what they have been found is that during the creative act, during these jazz improvisation, there is shutting down of some normal brain functions and supercharged activations of others. So there is a change. The brain, part of the brain that usually is analytical, problem solving, kind of like it's a little silenced. And then you have the other one, the imagination and so on, that is activated. And you see this in the brain. And using the functional MRI during jazz improvisation, what the study showed is that there are certain parts of the frontal lobe that decrease in activity, while others will really increase in activity. And what they did, they called these, the ones that reduce activation, they call them the executive attention network. And these are the parts of the brain which are involved in, problem solving and factual experience and doing a task, And these were silenced, and you have two other networks, the imagination and the salience networks, that really are activated. And what they found is that there is, at that time also, a good communication between the two brains. That's all of these happen during the creative part. So these changes loosen associations, allow the mind to roam free, to imagine new possibilities, and to silence the inner critic. So the creative cognition, so when you create, to summarize it, recruits brain regions critical for daydreaming, imagining the future, remembering personal memories, making meaning, and social cognition. And really what was very interesting, in these studies, that when the musicians were performing the jazz during these times, and when they were asked, all of them ignored the moment. They didn't they were not at all critical of the way they were playing. They didn't think at all about, am I doing well or not? Am I pleasing someone? What they did is, for them, they were creating, they were improvising, they had deep happiness in them, and they were creating something new. And here, just very quickly, is really to show you whatever is green, these are the executive attention network, and these are the ones that were found to be silenced during the creative act, and the red and the yellow are the imagination network and the salience network, who, on the contrary, were activated and contribute to the active process and to the disinhibition of the individual. Now, these changes are not only limited to the moment when the artists create, and that's why creating art is very important, and we should encourage it in everyone, because these changes affect the brain on a long term. And these immediate changes that happen during the creative act, when you follow someone, they made a change in the brain. And what they found is that frequently the artists, and there's a lot of studies that proved it, that people who are involved in art, when they took two groups, people involved in art and others not involved in art, those involved in art develop a different outlook and behavior. They become freer, more receptive, less inhibited, less prejudiced, and they discard preconceptions, they envision and create something new, they open their minds, they make them more accepting, understanding. And studies have shown that art, on the long run, increases empathy, tolerance, and feelings of love. And maybe you're aware of some of the experiments that really, now more than experiments, because kind of like they are established, that many schools have been using to pair the learning of sciences with the practice of art. And what they've done is that in all of these schools, for instance, when you teach a kid mathematics or algebra or whatever, physics, and if you pair it to activities of art, they found that the kids learn much more, becomes much more problem solver, less judgmental, more communicative between themselves, involve much more the teachers and their parents, and the effects, the result was amazing educationally. And this really was using the art as a way, the creative process as a way to improve the performance and improve the individual as such. So if one will summarize it, what is the result of the creative act? It's a process that involves and connects the entire individual, and therefore is important to reflect the individual. It reflects the artist's life, experiences, values, beliefs, points of view. If the artist is truthful, they cannot ignore all of those where they create art, because they are there, they are part of themselves. They reflect reality and social justice issues. If you face them, you have to be critical of them, and you have to address them in your creative art. They offer a new imagined reality. You cannot stop at only being critical. You need to bring with something new, and they change the artists themselves. Now, I had already mentioned a little bit, the arts, how it affects the artist. Now I want to make a distinction between art for art's sake versus the artist's sake. We're living in a society, in a consumer society, where everything becomes a commodity. And sadly enough, because of the philosophy of our society, because of the education we get, because of the demands, frequently art becomes limited to produce a consumable object as a commodity. And it's a consumable object that is pleasing to others, that can be sold, that can make money out of it. And the goal becomes the art object itself, the concept sometimes, and the technique behind it. But it doesn't really become the message of the art, doesn't really become what is really the artist saying. Now, I'm not really saying that there's anything wrong with that. If the artist can create a beautiful object that is commodifiable, sellable, it's fantastic. But if we limit the function of art to that, what we'll be doing will be progressively shutting out, the creative aspect of the artist to connect with themselves, and we will distancing the artists from who they are, and progressively making the artist unhappy. And I've experienced this a lot, dealing with a lot of artists, talking to them, and that's actually the reason why I started SOS Art, that frequently, because of the society, because of the art school that they go to, because of really the purpose, frequently these artists silenced their inner voice because, the galleries would not show their work that is really had a message. Art school will tell them, be conceptual, be abstract, you don't need to show right away your emotions. And this you need to sell, you need to have something that is, someone liked this piece of yours, why don't you do more, we can sell it more. And what this really causes, it really silences the creativity of the artist and renders the artist unhappy in their life and not creators anymore. So this commodity product is what society expects, even imposes on the artist, and it distances the artist from their inner self. It silences and kills the artist's inner voice due to non-use and neglect. So yes, there is a role of art in the creation of a beautiful, consumable object, but it shouldn't stop there. It should all the time connect to the artist, and it should carry individual emotions. Okay, no, if you do this only, it can still carry individual emotions, but frequently in isolation. It's just, because what will become important is the product itself, and then it dissociate the creation, the creative act, from social reality and of the artist. And the creative art is a process that should go beyond the mere object, that should involve the artist as such. So art for the artist's sake and art for life's sake. So if we say that, if we say that really art should not be limited to the object, therefore art reflecting the artist, therefore art becomes for the sake of the artist. So when you create art, it's really to empower yourself, to really give yourself a voice, to share what is important for you with others, to communicate your feelings to others. And so art becomes for your sake, for your own sake. And when you create it, you stop worrying about, am I going to sell it or not? What you're worrying about, is it strong enough to show who I am, to show what I'm saying? Am I doing it right? And in this respect, it becomes really implicating the entire artist. It becomes for the artist's sake, their life, their beliefs, their values. So you cannot really then ignore your beliefs and values when you create art. And the creative act becomes non-dissociated from the artist's experiences, beliefs, values. It becomes a response to an integrative process. It becomes the artist's expression, self-reflection, and communications needs. And but also art could have other, roles for the artist. It can really respond sometimes to an urgent need within the artist. It can be sometimes serve a therapeutic function in the artist. And we know of many artists who cannot stop but really doing art. They cannot really stop a minute. And if you invite them for a social event, they will tell you, no, I don't want to go. I remember having read about de Kooning. De Kooning was a very good friend with the Rockefellers, and then every time they will invite him, oh, hey, why don't you come with us to Venice? We have, and every time de Kooning will resist and will say, no, I cannot. My art is so important, it keeps me going. Why? Because these are the moments where the artist was growing and the continuity was important, and they didn't want to break it. And maybe many artists or yourself, when you're creating and someone invites you to a social event, you may say no, even as tempting as it can be, because you want to be immersed in what you're doing and continuing it. So from artists for the artist's sake, it becomes artists for the artist's life's sake. Because, if I reflect what I'm living, and if I reflect my life and life around me, it becomes for the sake of my own life, but then in general for life in general. It will stop to be only for my own life. So art for life's sake. It reflects the artist as a human being and as a citizen, involved, in tune with what's happening. Artist becomes a force for saying the truth, reflecting what's taking place and being critical, and pointing to what needs changing, being critical, but also offering an alternative, adding a positive creation to the world. And in this respect, it becomes really art for a better world, art for social justice. And if we say that, it becomes also the responsibility of the artist. It's not really only that the artist will do something. If the artist is in tune with themselves, truthful, not ignoring who they are, not ignoring the reality about themselves, therefore you will see that there's an immediate link to social justice. There is an immediate link to make things better. There is an immediate link to make the world a better world. Art, therefore, is the artist's voice for themselves and for their contribution to this world. And I hope we all agree on it. And, now I want to bring some wisdom to it. This voice needs to be expressed, grow, and communicate. So therefore, every person, we need to encourage this voice in every person, and every person really needs to use this voice to create. It is a responsibility of the artist, but also it is a responsibility of the community and us to really encourage someone else's voice and provide venues for someone else's voice to grow so it will get stronger. It is the artist's responsibility to use it and let it grow and not die. But I would say here, and I omitted adding it, it's not only the artist's responsibility, but it's also our responsibility to encourage it and provide venue for this voice. And you're all familiar with the proverb that say, use it or lose it. And if you don't really use a skill, a talent that you have, progressively it will fade out. For some of you who are singers, athletes, dancers, if you don't practice it regularly, you would realize that progressively it goes away. And to get back to it, become stronger, it will become more difficult. And that's really the problem with artists who, because of societal demands, do not really use their voice, their inner voice, but use something to please someone else, where progressively their inner voice goes away. Now here I would like really to add some wisdom, and that these are the wisdoms that I took from the gospel, not at all for the religious connotations, because I look at them, I love the gospels, reading them, because there's so much wisdom in it, really, in our daily life. And when I look at them, I take them away from the religious context. I take them as a human wisdom. And I love the parables of the talents. In the parable of the talents, where, whoever, Christ said, well, there was this master who had 3 servants, he had to go, and everyone has so many talents, and he asked them to fructify them. 2 of them fructified them a lot. The 3rd one hid them, did not use them. And then when the master came back, told them, what did you do with your talents? You had your talents. How come you didn't use it? You are a sinner. And when we say you are a sinner, it means you didn't really use your capacity to live your life as you should, to let it grow, to be as an individual growing. It's not really going to go to hell or to heaven. It is really, for me, it's really that you're a sinner because you missed an opportunity to affirm and establish who you are by developing your talents. And this becomes really a responsibility for each of us. Each of us have talents, a small or a big one. It's our responsibility to make them, to use them, to make them fructify. And it's the responsibility of the community to help the person use also their talent. The other parable, which is at the same time, is the lamp under the bushel. If we have a talent, if we have a light, it's our responsibility to let it shine. It's our responsibility to let it be seen. And it's the community's responsibility to let this light that someone has be seen. Otherwise, why would we have light that we put under the bushel? Well, we have a light that we will hide. It becomes our responsibility. And this is where, reflecting what we're living, being critical, and offering an alternative becomes our responsibility. So we have responsibility for making this world a better world, whichever way we think. So it becomes the artist's responsibility, and each of us, because each of us has a talent somewhere, to develop our voice and our talents, to let them grow, to contribute to peace and justice and to a better world. And I will add here, it's not only the artist's responsibility, but it's also the community responsibility and each of us responsibility to help trigger the same in others. Now, again, it brings here to the same thing that Jeremy read in the beginning, art as a means to community engagement. Artists should not express their voice alone and in isolation. If you have your voice and if your voice is important, you need to say it. But also, it is really important that you not be isolated in it. So it is very important of working with other people moved by similar values, ideas. Here again, I take a wisdom from the gospel, which says, where two or three gather in my name, there I am with them. And the way I look at it is that we know it. If we're doing something in isolation, our voice can be strong. But if we're two to feel the same and do it together, our voice grows more than double. It grows exponentially much more. And we really know that, like, Jesus said, well, my grace is with you. I would say when we are connected to others, our voice becomes stronger. Our voice grows more by resonating with others and creating a dialogue, a common feel. We become much stronger. And that's why people do political parties. I mean, why is there a political party? Because within the party you have people who have similar values, and their value grow, and they know more and more they confront their ideas with others, and this grows. And it will be the same for art. We should not limit art to our only expression. So who is the artist? Everyone who has received a godly creative quality and talents is an artist, all of us. And I really think whatever we do, we are an artist. When I think of myself, when I was practicing medicine, every moment of my life, I was an artist. Because every time, whenever I had a problem to solve, I was using my knowledge, my experience, my intuition, everything I knew, putting it together to solve a problem and be creative. I was an artist. I think that people who paint, one time I asked someone to come and paint walls in my house. The person was an artist because he really was putting his mind in everything he was doing, coming with the ideas, I can do it this way, here I prevent that. This person was an artist, was really adding something to the world. Whenever you put yourself in something, you are an artist, and we should, all of us, put ourselves in something because we all have talents. And all of these talents need to grow, whatever they are. If I'm cleaning the floor here, I can be an artist in the way I do it and how I put myself in this job. It is responsibility of each of us to use our talents to make them fructify and as co-creators to add to the creation and better this world. Conclusion. Genuine and truthful art implicates, engages, and reflects the artist. It ceases to be just for the sake of the consumable object and becomes for the sake of the artists themselves, their life, experience, values, beliefs, their views of the world. It becomes for the sake of life itself, adding beauty and betterment to the world. Peace, justice, change for a better world. And this is kind of like the same. I don't want to be preachy, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, what is our role therefore? We're all here, we are all creative, and we're calling ourselves Creative Mornings. We need to use our art, whatever it is, not only to produce beautiful consumable objects, but as our voice to assert who we are and communicate what we believe in, our thoughts and views of the world. We need to use it also to contribute new, imagined, and powerful solutions to better our world. We need to use it often so it will continue to grow and get stronger. And we need to use it not only in isolation, but share it and mold it with others where we live so it will grow exponentially. By this doing, we'll be surely contributing to a more just, peaceful, and better world. Okay, I think this is really my quick introduction about art as the voice of the artist for peace and justice. Now I want to speak a little bit of my work here. My path as an artist, I separate it between two parts, pre-2001 and after 2001. Before 2001, I did art. Actually, art was like a necessity for me. I started doing it when I came to this country from a different culture, and it was for me like an escape, therapeutic. I was in touch with myself doing it, but I created beautiful object where I put my emotions. But again, I was doing it in isolation. It didn't really reflect, rarely it did, reflect a social justice issue. In 2001, that April, for those of you who are here, there was racial riots in Cincinnati following the killing by police of a young unarmed African-American man, Timothy Mott. And in September 2001, there were 9/11. At that time, I was very, very involved with the artist community in Cincinnati. I was organizing a lot of art shows, so I befriended hundreds of artists. And I was talking with them about all of these issues, and all of them has very, very strong thoughts and beliefs about social justice. And I was so surprised not to see any in their work. And I was really asking, how come? If you feel so strongly about, racial violence, if you see so much about poverty, how come I'm not seeing this? Your art, after all, should come from you. It should really reflect it in a certain way. And this is where I started really thinking about it, doing research, talking to them. And I realized that really our society, the way education we do, did not want us to address them. So we were really training people who are all the time separated from who they are. And I felt that it was really good, it was important. Also for me, I started doing my own art, and my own art reflecting on these issues became sociopolitical. And I founded 2 years later SOS Art, and my art has been, at the time, mostly printmaking woodcuts. And I started really using what I felt and what I believed was important, disseminating it by going to schools, talking to kids, giving workshops, giving presentation about that issue, encouraging people not only to learn art as a technique, but to learn art as a tool to better themselves, express themselves, and become better people in this world. And I want to show some of my images very quickly. These one were done over the years. This one is My Name is Arab, and it really addresses profiling. And if you look in this group here, you have some people all black, dressed in black, and you have others with some writing in them, different. And this is Arabic writing. And if you look at it, you see that there are arrows that point only to the people who have the Arabic dresses. And there is no distinction about age or gender. You have a child, you have a woman, you have a man, possibly due to that. So kind of all of those, the only ones that are pointed on to are those with Arabic. And I used the stars to connect with our reality, which was the American flag. And this was really about profiling that happened and still is happening, by profiling Arabs, Muslims, whatever, as terrorists, as people evil, and so on. This one, we can really apply it to today. It's called We See Suns No More, how frequently we refuse to see the truth in front of us. We refuse to to use it as such. And we close our eyes, we distance ourselves. And here, by doing this, these are symbols for suns, and all of these people who are us are blindfolded like pawn, and we can really be moved in any direction we want. And this was my statement about, hey, we should not let ourselves be moved so easily. We should really see the reality, because otherwise we're going really to be silenced, and we're going to go in a direction that is not in tune with who we are. This one is about In the Land of the Free, and I did it because we speak a lot about freedom in our country, and In the Land of the Free is our motto, But in reality, what is the freedom of these birds in this end? They're not in cages, they are free. But what are the conditions of their freedom? Inexistent, because they are in a forest of thorns. They don't really have the conditions for freedom. And for me to be free, really free, you need to be given the conditions of freedom. And when I was thinking, when I did it, I thought of people who cannot go to the hospital, cannot go to schools, don't have cars to drive to go to the supermarket, and all of these issues that really take away the freedom of people. This one is the road to peace, and in it, what I want to say is that we speak a lot about peace, but we really very rarely look at the conditions why peace doesn't exist. what is the justice, the injustice that is created that is preventing peace from happening. So we want to impose our peace, and this happens everywhere. I mean, like now, in Ukraine, we're not even trying to impose peace, because we all are so much involved, our country first and the other countries, in what's going on, that we don't want really peace. We want really to stick to our own greed, and we ignore justice. The same thing as what's happening in Palestine all the time. We want to impose peace in Palestine, but at the same time, we ignore entirely the reality and why there is no peace. And this happens also in bullying in a class school. If a child is being bullied, and if the teacher will say, hey, you have to make peace between two without addressing the bullying, there wouldn't be peace, because it will come. So that was kind of like my statement about it. This one is really, see, if we use our power and our strength to achieve peace and solve the problems and not really use a real issue, we're going to contribute to death. And I took those from the Bush administration when I did this one. And what I'm saying, if we're really using the boot to kind of impose our will because we are strong, we are contributing to death. We are stepping on human beings and transforming them into... This one is about corporations. And I'm saying that frequently we need to look critically at what's happening, and where the human being becomes really the the turkey of corporation. So this is called the corporation Thanksgiving turkey, which is a human being, and kind of like being replaced. And this is about how we frequently use religions to justify wars and violence, and by doing this, we are destroying religions. And this one is, in the name of Jesus, we destroy Jesus. I use Jesus because we are a predominant Christian society. It could be, the Star of David. It could be the Quran. It could be a Buddha. Whenever we use religion to foment and facilitate violence, we are destroying the religion. We are destroying the teaching of the religion. And this one is really about how frequently in our comfort zone we want to ignore the reality around us. And that's what I was saying. We cannot just close our eyes like this couple very happy here and ignore what's happening next to us. And this one is, we see nothing, we hear nothing. This couple very nicely is having their date, their coffee, while right across from them there is violence going on. And they don't want to hear it again. So the role of the artist will be to point to that and to change it. And this one is about beds and beds, and really about, of course, the inequality in life from the moment we are born, because the moment we are born, we are different, sadly. But then take it one step further, is that really not offering opportunities for people to live differently and being judgmental. So this was really a call to compassion, that if someone has caused something that is really not according to your ethical values, ask yourself in which bed this person grew. Is it in a bed of comfort or in a bed of nails and destruction? And then maybe your outlook will change. Okay. Now, I'm going to go here quickly about SOS art. So, in 2001, I started thinking about SOS art. And in 2003, so this year is the 21st year, I founded SOS Art. And the reason I founded it is exactly for all the things that I mentioned. That we needed a venue for artists to be able to express who they are, away from the gallery, away from the consumerism. Give people an opportunity to use their voice for what's important to them, and by this doing, be able to grow their voice, confront it with others, and create a community of artists who will all connect together to really contribute to the better world. So it was founded in 2003. It became as an art exhibit and an art festival. And then we included in it kids and classroom visits. In 2015, it became a nonprofit, and we expanded its activities. So we have more art exhibits, more workshops, and wider educational programs, expanded publications, greater media presence, and more dynamic public engagement around issues of peace and justice. And we expanded a lot our activities with children and youth, not only through workshops and schools, but also through educational programs. So we have now a lot of educational programs. Some are established, some are being done. I'll mention them that are being used. And all of these is really kind of like to use art because of all of its power by changing people's mind, but also, introduce it at a young age where kids, where we can at the same time introduce values of peace and justice at an age where kids are receptive to these values, and then they can become part of them. Instead of telling them when they are 8 years and 9 years old, succeed so you can go to the moon, which is fantastic, we can tell them, be compassionate for your other person who cannot really succeed like you can and get to the moon. So by really introducing very early on the values that will make a person, a citizen for life, a good citizen for life. The mission, Jeremy read it very quickly, but we want to provide opportunities and venues for the arts, for peace and justice. We want to encourage artists to use their art as their voice for peace and justice and their community involvement. We want to facilitate the creation of a local community of artists who network and collaborate. We want to use art to speak about, inform, educate, and create a dialogue on issues of peace and justice. And through educational activities, we want to use the arts to introduce basic values of peace and justice in children. And, all of these are found on the SOS Art website. If you'd like really to spend more time, when you go into the section about, you will see all of these are listed. You can read them. The principles, these are important. Our work is mostly local. It's democratic, open equally to all, any age, any educational background, any religion, and it's non-juried. Everyone is welcome to say whatever they want. We believe if this person is given the opportunity to say something about peace and justice, their voice is going to grow. Is going to be confronted to others and be encouraged to do more. It's aimed at promoting the voice and message of the artist, not the artist's notoriety and sellability. It is money-free. We don't have money part of SOS Art. Nobody pays, nobody is being paid. We really feel that money corrupts peace and justice, and as such, there is no money. So it's a problem, because how do we survive? And I know that it has been a problem, and we try to do the best we can. We apply for grants when we can. We don't really follow people asking them for donation, but we say, if you'd like to help us, you're welcome. But I'm against sending notes or letters, please donate. I really don't want to have money behind it, Okay, so what are our activities? We have a yearly exhibit and festival of the art. We have many publications, at least 2 annual books, the SOS Art book, and For a Better World, book of poems and drawings on peace and justice. This book this year is in its 20th edition, and I can say that, Jay Harriman just contributed a drawing for it, and the book just finished and will be published in a few days, in few weeks. Workshops and art classes in schools and after school programs, panel discussions, public debates, poetry readings, performances, and so on. And this is to give you an idea. This is really our, art exhibit and events here. It's all based on peace and justice. Here, Muse was really contributing a concert on music, on peace music. This was, an artist who was really giving the introduction on peace and justice at the opening. This is one idea of the one image of a gallery. We have included, I'm proud to say, we have included in our activities for the past 21st year more than 3,500 local artists. They've been given voice. They are included in our activities. You can find their name on our website. And all of them, many of them are repeat, and many of them grow and really become very part of this community. We do publications. This is the SOS Art yearly documenting book, and these are 2 examples. These are all the artists that participated in 1 year. These are all the poets. These are some of our activities. So all of these books are on our website. We do the yearly For a Better World book of poems and drawings. It's open to all Greater Cincinnati poets, irrespective of age, gender, also to schools. We invite artists to do illustrations. Poets are invited to read their poems. They create a community. And we have so far more than 650 poets and 600 visual artists included in these books. And you can find them all on the website. And these are some of them. This is 2011, 2015, 2019. We do activities with different countries, and the only idea is really to expose Cincinnati people to art from a different culture, where artists also use their art to reflect their social reality and their cultural reality. So far what we've done, we have done 3 exhibits that are here, where we invited, many. Here there were more than 30, it's usually around 30 artists who are invited. This is from Oaxaca, Mexico. This was from Lebanon. This is from Czech Republic. And all of these are held here. And with the exhibit, we have a cultural festival where we have, expose dance, music, singing, food, poetry from the country. And we invite usually a couple of artists to come here and give talks. We have other activities. We do an annual USA Mini Prints for Peace and Justice Challenge and exhibit, and I want to here ask Jay to participate in it. The deadline is for application is February 5, and this is open to all artists throughout America. And the idea is really to disseminate, also encourage artists, printmakers all over America to use their art for peace and justice. We did a very moving book and event on called Inside Out, an affirming epiphany, is on transgender self-portraits with responsive poems by local poets. So there were around 30 transgenders who did their self-portrait, wrote statements, and I invited 30 local poets from Cincinnati who knew nothing, many of them, about transgender, to respond to the self-portrait. It was a wonderful way to learn to expand the dialogue and strengthen the voice of the transgender. We do books, many other books. This is about, it's a book I published in 2015, is about Greater Cincinnati artists as activists. There are 50 local artists included in it. This is a book that includes 100 local poets and 100 visual artists, which was a selection of our For a Better World books. Educational programs, we do presentation to schools, school participation, SOS art exhibits, and for the past 2 years, we've had a dedicated youth SOS art event, where in February, it was last February, we have schools, all schools and after-school program invited to participate. The participation is still limited because it happened right at the time of COVID, but you can see all the work in a gallery on our website. You can see, and every year there are more than 200 work of arts by students, kids who speak about art. And we invite, if you know of schools, we invite anyone to participate. We use a value-based curriculum for teaching art. So we developed a curriculum where, and we've been applying it, where when we teach art, we don't only teach the technique of art, but we start by exposing the youth to a certain value. For instance, I'm speaking about painting today. I will figure out a couple of paintings that, for instance, speak of compassion. And I will start the class by showing these paintings, create a discussion with the whole students, brainstorm so they will share their own experience. Then I will teach them the technique of painting, and at the end, they will do a painting relating to what they have discussed earlier about compassion. And we do this with many values, with the idea to implement these values actively, to make kids think about it actively. So you have, one on empathy, compassion, tolerance, equity, equality, freedom. We use a book here to do the same, and where we have, it's the best of For a Better World, where we created thematic modules that address discrimination, poverty, homelessness, war, violence, non-violence, and environment. And these books are all available to schools freely, and where we ask, the creative writing teacher, because they are poetry, the art teacher, the social art teacher, to use them and discuss, and they can really use the poems and the images in the book with their kids, and also they can invite the poets and the visual artists who are local to come and talk to their kids. We just started this. We're creating comic books, and these are very small books, on a theme of peace and justice. We have already created 2, one on environment and one on hunger, on food insecurity. And these books are given free to all elementary and complementary schools in Cincinnati. So we just printed these two, and they are right now in 65 elementary and complementary CPS schools, and with the art teachers, and hopefully they will, I still have some, I want to disseminate them to other schools, and we're working on additional ones. We're working one on endangered animals, we're working a collaborative one between prisoners in Oaxaca and prisoners in Cincinnati on freedom. We're working on one on gentrification between a group of youth in Oaxaca and a group here. We're working on tolerance, one on equality. So we're having all of these books are going to continue being done, and they will be all distributed freely to the schools. And we're right now finishing a Peacemaker's deck of cards that also will be given free to school, where we are creating a deck of cards. It's not the size of, it's index card size, and they're not playing cards. But what they are, their strength is that they have 66 peacemakers from all over the world, all ages, all techniques, and so on. And you have the image of the peacemaker. On the other side of the card, you have a quote by the peacemaker and a biography of the peacemaker. And these will be a starting point in the school, so the teachers can really use them to help the student to learn more about a certain peacemaker, why were they peacemaker, they can compare, they can work in groups, and so on. And these will be finalized hopefully soon. I think this must be it. Yeah. So if you're interested in seeing any of our activities, and there are much more that really I didn't mention to see, please go to our website, sosrcincinnati.com. If you have any questions, you would like to communicate, please, this is our email. And thank you for being here and listening, and thanks again to Alice and Creative Mornings for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.